Well, good evening to you. Welcome back to Frankenstein. My name is John Roy. I'm here with my friend Mike Twitchell.
How we doing?
And I am a person who comes from a background of just literature and religion. Mike's here because he is a man of science.
I've been known to dabble in some science from time to time.
And so I've asked him, he's been reading the book with me. And so we're going to share some of the things that we've been thinking about.
Sure.
All right?
Sure
So
thing.
let's just get started with, all right. Is there a bad guy in this story?
I think that's a tough one. I think that's at the almost at the center of the book and sort of how you weigh the characters there. But I think people who haven't read the book assume that the creature is the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very clear that both Dr. Frankenstein and the creature commit evil acts and bad acts. You can't argue that, I don't think.
No.
But I think that at their heart, I think that yes, there is a bad guy, and I think it's actually the doctor, and the creature's actually good at heart.
Right.
How I would describe it.
But that's a good way of putting it, though, to begin with, because we love a world where one person wears a black hat, another person wears a white hat.
Sure.
But the truth of the matter is, most of us wear gray hats. Mm-hmm. You know, and even the doctor, even though he does some despicable things, he has his shining moments too.
Sure.
And so, but you're right. The creature seems to be the real sort of victim here.
Right, and I think the Mary Shelley does a nice job adding depth to the creature in this. There's a lot of depth to his character, and as you learn more and more about him and how he's feeling and how he interacts with the world, there's a lot of depth there.
All right, now, if you're reading with us, I'm going to ask Mike. He's going to tell us, where does this story really begin? Okay, where's the actual first scene take place?
That's an interesting one too, because I actually had to read that a couple of times. I honestly thought I picked up the wrong book. I had never read it before when John asked me to do this, and I read it and reread the first chapter, and it opens with an explorer. What's his name again? My mind's blank. Winston? Walton. Sorry.
That's right.
It opens with Walton more or less organizing a voyage to the Arctic. Mm-hmm. He's an explorer on a ship, and we're based in the 1800s, and has nothing to do. The beginning of the story has nothing to do with the creature or the doctor, and it becomes sort of the backdrop of stories within a story.
Yeah.
And so it takes a little time to get going in it for sure, to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, that's right, because they use this device where you see Walton sees him,
right,
and brings him into the boat, or brings him onto the boat, and then they begin to tell the story in the rearview mirror, and it begins to unfold, and then there's stories
inside the story.
inside the story.
Right. That's right.
It's kind of like one of those Russian doll things where you just keep pulling dolls apart.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I actually saw I combined read the book, the actual book, and did some digital audio as well, and there was a review actually of the book that gave it a 1-star review, because the language and the way it was written, it's really hard to read, and it's not an easy read for sure. But it's well worth it.
Yeah, well, like I told y'all last week, it was written in 1816. So I mean, how many books do you have in your library that are 200 years old?
That's
true.
true.
It's not many.
Sure.
So now, the doctor has a family, and the book takes a considerable amount of time to talk about the family, and then sort of walk you through the various mishaps or struggles that the family has. And you can sometimes think, well, why are they wasting time with this sort of sideline story? But it's really not, is it?
No, I think all of that is, while those, I guess some of the events are main plot events, but if you didn't have a lot of the background of the characters, and honestly how good some of those characters are and where they came from, the contrast to what happens with them, and how the family, the tragedies that befall the family.
And there was a brother. It's okay to look at your notes. There's a brother, there's a sister.
Henry Clerval is the brother.
Yeah.
The sister / cousin, the sort of a step sister type of thing, was Elizabeth. And and Dad's name was Alphonse Frankenstein. Was his name.
And did you see when you read about these characters? Did you see reflections of the Doctor himself in them, or how did you see their relationship?
Yeah, I think that the brother Clerval was very similar to the Doctor in his early days.
Mm-hmm.
They're both very seemingly smart, driven
Mm-hmm.
people.
Mm-hmm.
Both are interested in furthering knowledge. Different avenues. The Dr. Frankenstein is more of a science on the science side, and his brother is more. I think he gets into colonization and government and things like that. But it is interesting that he starts furthering his knowledge and has discoveries that he wants to go further as well.
Yeah.
So I think those two are similar.
Now, do they all die?
Yes. I guess in the end,
Elizabeth dies by some.
Spoiler alert, I guess.
Yeah. Elizabeth dies by a tragedy, right? If I'm not.
By the creature.
By the creature.
Yep. Clerval does too.
Clerval does too. How does the father die?
I want to say that was just by natural causes.
By natural causes.
Yeah,
and then, even Frankenstein's wife, when he marries her,
right.
She dies.
Right.
Too.
Well, that's Elizabeth.
That's right.
So he basically marries
his cousin,
stepsister thing, and for a little time when his mother passed of natural causes, she actually sort of filled in the mother role in the family as well.
That's true.
So when she did die, it was like all of those figures, his sister, mother, and wife, were pulled out of his life all at once.
And I do think that has a real effect on him.
No doubt.
That he created the very thing that destroyed his family.
Right. That's right.
And there's some irony to that.
No doubt. Yeah. And past even created. I mean, and we'll get to progress and nature versus nurture in a little bit, but it was not only created, but his actions after the creation is really what led to it.
Right. All right, well, let's go ahead and get into progress a bit. One of the recurring themes is progress. And is progress, I don't think she makes it as simple as is progress good or bad, but it is a wrestling match with how do we accept and live with progress in this world. And I think you got some thoughts on that. I know I have plenty, but I'll step aside for a moment.
So we can, I think what struck me, and I think when you reflect in your own lives and what you've accomplished and tragedies that have happened, and then through human history, is I think general progress, advancements always come with collateral effects.
Yes.
When John and I spoke, when we talked before about this, I used the word collateral damage, and that implies all of those effects are bad. Not all of those effects are bad at all,
right.
but whatever you do to change something, improve something, there's other things happen around that, and I think that's very central to the story.
I do too. I think that progress. You're in a field that has made a lot of progress.
Sure.
In the course of my lifetime, it has. And there are a lot of things that we learned by going to the moon. And a lot of progress that we've had in this world because of space travel.
Sure.
And yet we've lost. We lost the spaceship during Reagan's era.
Challenger.
The Challenger.
Yeah, sure.
And we've had others tragedies. So progress does come with some price. And she's writing this book, as we mentioned last week, about 45 to 50 years into the Industrial Revolution. So she's seen sort of the effects. What you have in the world that she's living in is that people's income is probably rising. They're probably making more. They've also had to come to the city, so they're living in tighter spaces. And she's looking back and kind of thinking, well, what was the price for this? And is this price too high a price?
Sure.
Sometimes we might say that it is, but other times we would say, no, definitely not. We've had a lot of progress that we'd be very pleased with.
Sure. A good example in my field is just the advent of dental anesthetic, right?
Yeah.
Right. We used to pull teeth out, and hopefully people had enough alcohol to drink before we were doing it.
Right.
And if you look at advancement in all of medicine, the ability to have people not feel it, go to sleep, whatever, is probably the number one advancement of all of everything. So that's definitely not something that you would wish we didn't have.
That's right.
But at the same time, there are probably along the way people who died on the operating table in development of those things.
That's right.
Yeah, and I think the use and knowledge of atomic energy is an obvious, like, and that's a big, there's being able to develop energy and a cleaner source than other things is great, but atomic energy is also can be weaponized and has been used that way in the past.
And as you pointed out to me in a text today, she's dealing with electricity.
Right.
I mean,
that's a modern.
The modern the way that the creature is made is with electricity. Electricity was still in its infancy.
Yeah, right.
And so they're wrestling with, is this ultimately a good thing?
She was a contemporary of the really development of mainstream electricity and I don't think anybody alive would think it's bad.
No.
But at the same time, in her days in the Industrial Evolution, she saw kids being worked, she saw factories being developed, life changing, and she's probably scratching her head thinking, maybe this electricity, maybe having lights on to be able to work to midnight maybe isn't such a good thing.
That's right. And I think that as you and I've talked off camera, we're both people who would always side on progress. We probably would. But we also think there needs to be a deliberative conversation about the moral and ethical values of progress.
Sure.
And sometimes the question is not can we do this, but but should we do it?
The whole just because you can do something doesn't mean you should comes up a lot for sure, and it should. I mean, those are conversations I think are very healthy to have.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going to leave it with there for you to consider progress and to work with progress yourselves. Let's see. As the story, let me look at the time. Okay, we got time for this. The story is winding down. All right, comes back to the ship. Right. The whole story is taking place. It's taking you back in inside of another story, but now it's unfolding on the deck of the ship at the end. And he has the doctor, Dr. Frankenstein, has two speeches. And
he's pretty good at making speeches throughout the book anyway.
Right. In fact, that's one of her devices all through the book is to let him just ramble. And he oftentimes makes sometimes a point that makes you want to throw the book, and sometimes he makes a point that you go, wow.
And sometimes he's doing it to people, and sometimes he's just doing it to himself.
That's right.
His thoughts and things.
So here he is talking to Walton, or talking to Walton's crew, and Walton is an explorer. And we now get to wrestle with the idea of ambition. And what did you think of that, and how she unpacked that? Or
to give a little more background, the scenes that are going on is they're working their way to the Arctic.
That's right.
The book opens with him really focused on making discoveries in like magnetism and the poles and all this, and full knowledge of all that. And they're at this point pretty much landlocked in ice. Like the ship is stuck. And the crew is talking about, like, if we ever get out of here, we have to turn back. And to begin with, the doctor sort of says, "You guys are a bunch of cowards. Keep going."
Yeah.
And there's that aspect of the speech, but then later on, it sort of goes the other way.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting to note that both the doctor's brother Clerval and the explorer both sort of get into the same boat of like, we want to further progress, we want to explore, we want to do something new, and what collateral damage is going to come from that. The explorer very well may have killed his whole crew and himself doing this, and Frankenstein is talking with him about that. It's like, are you making the right decisions?
And Walton is a good character. I think Walton sort of is a stand-in for all of us who would want to accomplish something. Walton is a person who is trying to make a difference. So we all want to make a difference. We all want to make our contribution, make our mark. But what is the price you have to pay for that?
Right.
And it's not that it's wrong to do it, even if the price is high. It's just that you should have your eyes wide open, knowing what you're doing. And we didn't talk about this off camera, and when you said what you said, it reminded me that, this would have been the time when a lot of exploration would be going on at the poles. Yeah. And they probably did have, I can't think of all the different people, I want to say Whitehead and some others that went to each pole. And sometimes those expeditions were tragic, that they didn't return.
I would venture to say that probably every one of them had at least a death on it. I mean, I'm not a student of history like that, but
Well, I know that several had to, I remember one story that I read of, I can't remember the exact name of the boat, but they turned back 3 times. I mean, they would go and then they would get iced in, and they'd have to come back. And, of course, people are bankrolling this back in England.
Right.
And so they don't want you to come back without anything, without something.
Yeah.
And so you really do have to push on through. And so, but anyway, that's the way the story ends, is with this wrestling match with what is the purpose, how do we rein in our ambitions? How do we use our ambitions in the most productive way?
Sure. Yeah. And I think one of the things that I know John and I spoke about is, the being ambitious and progress, and there's a quote that I like we'll get to in a second, but those it doesn't have to be the same for everybody either.
Right.
What is ambition to one person may be not to somebody else, or what may be the drive of one person may not be to somebody else, and that's okay. We all have talents that God's given us, and we should use those to further His kingdom. But at the same time, chasing ambition for ambition's sake, I think is what this is trying to address.
I think you're exactly right. I think that's probably a good time to drop that.
Sure.
That's the latter part of one of his speeches, isn't it?
Yeah, it's. I think this is his last words before the doctor passes.
Okay.
But it says, "Farewell, Walton. Seek happiness and tranquility, and avoid ambition, even if it be only the apparently innocent one of distinguishing yourself in science and discoveries. Yet why do I say this? I have myself been blasted in these hopes, yet another may succeed."
Now, the word tranquility,
that stands out to me.
That does to me too. So when you think about tranquility, what do you think he's getting, or what do you think Mary Shelley's getting at with tranquility?
I think it's to me, when I hear that word, the peaceful is one that comes out of that, and I think that just general contentedness with what your world is, and I don't think she's encouraging us to live in a van down by the river and do nothing. I don't think that's what it is, but I think it's setting goals for ourselves, working toward things, but then being content with our lives and what's around us and who are around us, and not just trying to do more just to do more.
Well, one of the powerful things that I take away from this story as we wrap this up is that about contentment. If we were lazy, we'd still be sitting around a fire. That's what we'd be doing every night, is building a fire, and that would be it. So there's got to be some drive. There's got to be some ambition. There's got to be somebody saying, we can do better.
Sure.
Right? But the opposite of that is also true. At some point, we have to say, we need to be content. We need to be satisfied.
We need to be okay sitting around that fire.
Right. We need to be okay with what we possess, whatever that is. And I see a lot of misery in this world because people are just reaching for things that are never going to give them happiness.
Right.
And they can't be content with what God's already provided them. And so, well, we hope we've given you something to think about.
It's a great story. Be patient with it. It's not an easy read, I would say.
Yeah.
I had great progress with it, going the audio version. So if you're struggling getting through it, reading it, switch to that.
Do you know who does the audio version?
I just pulled it off of iBooks.
Okay.
But there's a lot of different ones out there who do it.
Because I know you can get the book is 200 years old, so you can get it for free.
For free.
But even the audios are really
$10, I think.
$10, and I think you could probably look around and find it for $2.99 somewhere. But anyway, all right, one more week, and we'll talk again next week. All right.
Very good.
Bye now.